Hello. It seems to be the time for bookshelf tours, so I'll go ahead and make one. I got my bookshelf set up nicely now after the move and got all my books on it. So I'll start with the top and just go down. It'll be the same method as I did before where I just talk about certain ones. Feel free to ask about anything in the comments if you're curious, but yeah, this one on the very left, Rogues, Vagabonds, and Sturdy Beggars. It's a book about like confidence men and criminals from Elizabethan England. And it's actual like pamphlets that were published at the time. One of them is pretty interesting. It's like somewhat of a dictionary. Like if you hear this word, you know that the person is a thief or a pickpocket or something like that, or you know what they're talking about. And then these five in the middle here, the Voynich manuscript facsimile, which is really interesting. Krasnohorkai's Manhattan Project. I think that's Sir Francis Drake, Histoire naturelle des Indes. It's a facsimile of a document that shows you all the plants and the people and the different lands that they discovered in the Indies in the 1500s. The next one there is a historical document of a journal of a shopkeeper, he's not a shopkeeper, he's a merchant from Shakespeare's time. And that same book was used to write down some information about some Shakespeare's early plays. And there's those. And then on the end there I have Aurelian. And then the top shelf is just kind of, as you can see, box sets and things, really big books. This next shelf is my classic shelf. So as you see, it goes from Latin, Greek, more Latin, and then I have the Bible, some Chinese classics. I have my Sanskrit classic, and then two books that kind of fit. Vico's New Science, and then Girard's Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. So, yeah, this Latin dictionary is something I just recently got for my birthday. It was a gift. And Diogenes Laertius, I bought that myself, this 2-volume Loeb edition, which has the original Greek. That is it's the Lives of the Eminent Philosophers, if anyone's seen that. And there are really long ones on like Aristotle, Plato, but the ones I really like the most are Heraclitus, which is like 4 pages or so, and then there's Diogenes, and Democritus is really good, Thales, or however you say it. And then there's I've been interested in satires lately, and so there's Petronius and Seneca. And then also I have Horace, his satires on the left there, and then the odes and epodes. Down here I have the Chapman's Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then Golding's translation of the Metamorphosis. And then these 3 books here, the Cambridge History of Classical Literature, I basically got the time period from Cicero through Virgil, Ovid, Horace, through Lucan. I think it includes Petronius in that part 4, the one on the right. And then I have my Virgil. The 2 Ferrer, Strauss, and Giroux ones are bilingual, and then the Aeneid is not. But I wanted to have it in Latin, so I got that. I have Catullus, Ovid's Poems of Exile, which is what I talked about in my video on French Renaissance literature. Figured I might as well have the Bible because it's roughly contemporary with all this stuff here. And then for a little bit later, we have these Chinese poets. Well, some of them are later. This Poems of the Master spans a few thousand years, I believe. But the poems I really like in it are from the like 800s, 700s, 800s, the Tang Dynasty. Then there's Su Tung Po, which is from the Song Dynasty, which is around 1000 to 1100 or so. And then this Arjuna and the Hunter is between those two time periods. And then these two works of anthropology, which I feel I was trying to find something that would fit here, and yeah, I don't know. I think those fit. New Science, which is generally important for Finnegan's Wake. So my next shelf, I've been kind of into Italian literature lately, so this next one here is Italian. We have my Dante stuff here. This Paradiso one is really nice because it shows the text commentary in the original Italian. I have Cavalcanti. Donna Me Prega is my favorite of his. Although this translation isn't excellent of that poem, but it's good enough. I have Petrarch. Oddly enough, this history and anthology of Italian literature I found at the local half-price books on clearance. It was $5, and it has pretty much all the best classic Italian poets. Like it has Ariosto, Tasso, Giambattista Marino, Boiardo. I'm probably missing a couple. I think it has Folengo in it too. But yeah, it's like the 1500s to 1700s, I think, is the time period it follows. Oh, and this little opal here I got when I went to Santa Fe. It was pretty nice. And then I have Tasso and Folengo, Boccaccio, Ariosto. I got Leopardi Zibaldone. This one I replaced. I originally had the paperback, and then I found this one for very cheap, shockingly, because it's ridiculous prices you find online. But this is the hardcover of the Zibaldone, which is just excellent to open up and read. It's the notebooks of Leopardi, who was the great Italian poet of the 19th century. And then I have Leopardi's moral essays, which is, some of them are just straight essays, but some of them are dialogues between different historical figures. There's one that has Tasso in it, and Tasso wrote his own dialogue, so that's a sort of tradition. Then I have Pavese, This Business of Living, which is his journals. And it's interesting, the Italian tradition has a pretty strong pessimism to it, which I enjoy a lot, actually. I've had This Business of Living for a while, and it's been one of my favorites. And then as I don't know, I can't think of the right word, but this is all the untranslated blog's fault from Andre. Because although I don't read Italian and I don't speak it, I only am able to, I'm only skilled in Spanish. I got these because he did such an excellent job talking about these books, and they were cheap now. And I always worry that good things will get expensive because of what happened with like Gaddis or Women and Men by McElroy, or even McCarthy when he was first publishing to when All the Pretty Horses came out and everything became $10,000 for early printings or whatever. So those I can't read yet, but I'm really excited to whenever I'm able, whether it be in 1 or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. So that's waiting for me there. Next is my German language shelf. I have Goethe's Italian Journey, and this was one of the first works of literature I ever read, really, that really got me into all the classics, because I was in a library and I was just walking through and I saw the travel section, which there was an section on Italy, and I just saw this huge book. It was an edition like this. I'll show it because it's really worth seeing. And so I just see this big thing hanging out, and at that point I don't even know if I know who Goethe was, and I said it like Goeth. That's how I said it in my head. And so I started reading it, and I just loved it from the start. It's translated by W.H. Auden and a woman, I can't remember her name right now. I've talked about it in a previous video. But, and then I had to return it to the library, this big edition. And so I bought the Penguin, and I finished it in the Penguin, but it had such a good memory to me that I decided to buy this big edition too. And I have Wagner's Ring Cycle. I wanted to be able to read the text. Carmina Burana, which is the original Latin from around the 1100s, the Galliards, the itinerant scoundrel scholars who went from place to place writing secular poetry and causing trouble, which is the what Karl Orff's ballet is based on. There's Thomas Bernhard, Hermann Broch, right next to Robert Musil. And then anniversaries, all my Arno Schmidt here. Radio dialogues, collected novellas, 2 novels, School for Atheists. My Bottom's Dream doesn't fit on the bookshelf, so unfortunately that's just how that is. And then my next shelf is my like British islands, or whatever you'd call them, British Isles shelf. So we have Concise Etymological Dictionary of the English Language, which is awesome. I have this Irish English dictionary that I use with Finnegan's Wake and also just to read. Reading dictionaries is actually pretty fascinating. You learn a lot about the culture of the language and the people who spoke it. This really thin book here is Word Hoard. It's actually like an essential dictionary of Old English. It's like, I think, 2,000 words, something like that. Well, anyway, it's like a small amount of words that if you memorize them, you know 90% of the words that you find when you read Old English. And then we have Beowulf, and this Beowulf here is pretty awesome. It's actually the manuscript, a facsimile of the manuscript of Beowulf. Oh, I opened to a bad page. Flip it around for you. But yeah, as you see here, it'll focus. Yeah, and this is published by the Early English Text Society, which the guy, Skeet, the guy who did the etymological dictionary, was an editor for. Then I have the Exeter book, the Columbia Press edition by George Krapp, and that is the Old English. Exeter book is the largest collection. There are 4 main collections of Old English literature, and the Exeter book is the largest. It has the Wanderer, it has the Seafarer. Those are the 2 really beautiful Old English poems. Curiosities, he was an English traveler. He brought the fork to England. So, and he's known for being kind of an eccentric, crazy guy. It's just hilarious to read it, actually. And also, just as like a side note, I am going pretty quickly through these, so if anyone wants to see any of these in depth, you know, let me know in the comments and I can go back and go through them. I kind of just want to do a quick little run through and not focus too much on them. But then I have a facsimile edition of Philip Sidney's Astrophil and Stella from 1591, which is awesome. I have the Shakespeare Sonnets, which I think is actually the best edition of his sonnets, because it has the sonnet on the left as a facsimile edition, And then it has on the right, modernized English. So if you have difficulty reading facsimiles, but you still want to get a feeling for the time, this is, and it is excellent. It's Yale University Press. And then I have my Thomas Brown. You'll see this shelf is vaguely chronological, but I don't really like to have a crazy system set up or like an overly rigorous system. I prefer to have things arranged by my personal connection to them or by chance. And it's especially nice if I can't find something I'm looking for, because then you find all the books that you forgot you had when you looked for it. I stole that from Scott Bradfield, by the way, but anyway, check out his channel. Anatomy of Melancholy. And then here's my Paradise Lost by Milton. If you notice, this is the same press as this Astrophil and Stella Scholar Press. I'm planning on making a video about the different facsimile presses of English books, if anyone's interested in that. I've been kind of getting into that lately, as you've probably noticed. I have a biography of Isaac Newton, Never at Rest, which is awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Newton was one of the most interesting English people. I have an edition of Tristram Shandy from the 1850s. I always like to think that this is one that Melville noticed but never bought. It's pretty cool. You can find these for really cheap, actually, surprisingly enough. Got my Finnegan's Wake. Can't have a English shelf without Finnegan's Wake. Moby Dick, and this excellent University of California edition, and the recognitions. And then this bottom shelf is all the really big books I have. It's just kind of randomly arranged. I have the Feynman Lectures on Physics. Richard Feynman has been one of my favorite people for a really long time. And yeah, these were given to me as a gift, and they're one of my favorite sets of books. I have a facsimile edition of the King James Version of the Holy Bible, 1611 text. And this here is Pearl, Cleanness, Patience, and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's also a facsimile of the Middle English text. It's done by the Early English Text Society again. And that one's really amazing to read because Pearl, I think, is one of the most beautiful poems in English. And then you see their handwriting and you see some of the drawings they put along with it and stuff. It's so nice. I have a 2-volume biography of Herman Melville by Herschel Parker. I originally had this and had to replace it. My brother was nice enough to buy this replacement for me. And yeah, as a little side digression, as you see here, you may have noticed that quite a few of my books have been bought from libraries. Like they had been in the library at some point, and then now I have them. Like, this clearly. And I don't have a problem with that at all, as long as they're not written in. But it always surprises me how much it affects people if a library has owned a book that they now own. If it has, let's say, a sticker on it or, something. And which, of course, doesn't affect what's inside the cover. I understand to an extent that you don't want a book with all kinds of stuff all over it, but yeah, I don't know. I've been hearing all this stuff. Yeah, really all the superficial stuff about books troubles me. And then one of my things I really enjoy, and I'm really happy I was able to get for a good deal. It's not the complete Golden Bow. I'm missing 2 volumes in the middle here. I think right after The Dying God. I'm missing the Adonis 2 volumes, but this is, and then I'm also missing the last volume, which is like an index, which I'm not prioritizing right now. But yeah, The Dying God is the one I've read through, and then I've read little bits of each of them. And yeah, I don't know. I just kind of hold this as like an amazing achievement. And that's something I forgot to talk about with the, like, let's say the foreign language books I haven't read. Because, if I was less informed and if I wasn't myself and I was watching this, I would think, well, why would he have books that he can't read now or that he hasn't read yet? Things like that. And one of the interesting things about the Untranslated blog, which if you haven't checked out, I highly recommend it. One interesting thing he said about, I believe it was Antonio Moresco. It was either Moresco or Sinis Orca, Stefano Dadigo. He said that although it's a difficult book, although it's in Italian and has not been translated, whether we like it or not, it is a part of our civilization, and we have to accept that, and we have to account for that it is a part of our civilization now. And thinking of it that way, the golden bow is a part of our civilization. And another thing about that is you can never take for granted that someone else will know of it. Because that's one thing I've thought and never let myself fall into really in the past, is that, you can think, oh, I'm already interested in so many things. If I add to the list, it's just too much. I shouldn't learn this. I shouldn't learn that. Someone else can learn it. There's already someone else who's an expert in it. And that's probably true. I've been watching these videos of this guy, Jackson Crawford, who's a Old Norse specialist. And yeah, there's going to be a Jackson Crawford who's a professor in Colorado and Old Norse. There's going to be a guy like that for almost everything. But you can never be sure if you, for some horrible reason, happen to be the only person who's interested in this collection of things at a certain time in history. And I think you just can't take that for granted. You can't take it for granted that someone else will be learning the things that you should be learning. Like, keeping the civilization up for everyone else. Along with, history. Someone has to keep history in mind at all times so that bad things don't happen whenever they don't need to happen. Like the doctors that know about the 1918 Spanish flu, we always have to have them around. But I also think we have to have someone around who thinks about the culture of our civilization and has a broad perspective on it, to not get bogged down on a very particular point. As you notice here, I don't have some of my really prized books here, like a lot of my Cormac McCarthy or Gaddis. I have one Gaddis. Or a lot of my Spanish language books, or my Mexican books, or anything like that. But yeah, this was just meant to be a really quick video, something to watch while you're bored at home. God forbid you're an essential worker like me. But yeah, if you want me to talk about anything else in particular, let me know. Death is a gang boss.